All right, I would like you to imagine that you are invited to an ice cream party. And the party says that it is for everyone. And so you show up. Think for a moment about what you might expect to get or to see or to eat at such a party. What are some of the things you might expect to see or to be at this ice cream party? Ice cream, excellent, that's a good start. Hot fudge sauce, an assortment of toppings, smiles, spoons, excellent. You guys, man, I'm hungry. I want an ice cream party now. Wonderful. Okay, so now imagine when you get there, there's only vanilla ice cream. And I mean only vanilla ice cream, right? Like no toppings, no fudge, no other flavors. Okay, there are spoons. Oh, you might say to yourself, I thought this was going to be an ice cream party. And imagine now that the host of the party responds, but it is a party, right? But there are only vanilla. There's only vanilla, you say. There are no other flavors, no toppings, no sprinkles, no fudge. Yes, but there are different kinds of vanilla. We have French vanilla, we have vanilla bean, we have regular vanilla. And now, imagine that someone, maybe you, maybe somebody else, comes up and asks the host if there is non-dairy ice cream. What? The host might say, that isn't ice cream. Ice cream has cream in it. And now imagine if somebody else comes up and says, well, do you have any ice cream without sugar? And the host, who is getting kind of upset now, responds, ice cream without sugar, that's just milk. This is not a very welcoming or inclusive ice cream party, is it? Even though it said it was for everyone, it really isn't. And now, let's retcon the story. Let's go back and change it. Imagine instead that you get to the ice cream party and there are all sorts of vanilla flavors and all sorts of chocolate flavors and strawberry and pralines and cream and Oreo, and there's sprinkles and there's fudge and there's whipped cream, and there's not just one non-dairy option, but actually a couple non-dairy options, and there's not just one sugar-free ice cream, but a couple different choices for people who prefer sugar-free ice cream. And imagine that there is even maybe one or two non-dairy sugar-free ice creams. Right? Now, that's beginning to feel more like an ice cream party for everyone, right? All right. So now imagine that this ice cream party is a church. There is vanilla, and that's great if you like vanilla, but it's not necessarily so great for everyone else. And maybe this ice cream party church only has Sunday morning worship and only uses classical music, and the structure is only ever a hymn sandwich. And this is great if that is what you are looking for. There's nothing wrong with that. But is it really for everyone? Then there's, let's say, a really welcoming party with all sorts of different flavors. That church might have all sorts of opportunities for people to plug in and engage in their search for truth and meaning. It might use different kinds of music and readings and worship, knowing that people come from different lived experiences. It welcomes people of all ages by including them in the service. It welcomes people of a variety of different theological backgrounds and leanings. This second, more welcoming church isn't trying to be everything to everyone. It is an ice cream party, after all, not a potluck or a general dessert party. But it's trying to do what it does in an inclusive way. Okay. So now I'm going to ask the question, what kind of church do you want UUI to be? Do you want UUI to be the vanilla church or the one with all the different flavors that is actively trying to welcome everyone? This is the challenge that is poised by something called preemptive radical inclusion. And this is a framework that was developed by C.B. Beale, who founded Peace and Justice Consulting and is also a Unitarian Universalist. Preemptive radical inclusion, which I'll also sometimes call PRI because it's a lot to say, is a way of being, a way of leading, Beale says. It is a philosophy about creating just, loving, and creative spaces in the world. But it's more than just a philosophical approach. It's an intervention, an activity, a process. It's something we practice. Not to check a box off in a planning kind of way, but instead is a way to examine our assumptions, to examine our privilege, to take responsibility for being who we want to be, who we say we want to be, and even to work for justice. It's preemptive because we intentionally position ourselves before we know anything at all about anyone in the room. We intentionally position ourselves to presuppose that everyone is already here. We don't wait for an individual to tell us what they need and then meet their needs. We create experiences that preemptively involve them. The burden is on those in leadership to be aware of the needs of people that we are most likely to miss, to think about it and to plan ahead. The word radical is there in the middle because if those who have responsibility for planning are doing this correctly, the created experience will not be the expected experience. It might even be dramatically, radically different than the way things were done before. And inclusion doesn't simply mean that we include others in our circle of what we already do and how we do it, but it means that we expand the experience. We make the circle wider and wider still to encourage deep involvement and make that involvement possible. Inclusion, without centering the voices of those most marginalized, those who are most pushed to the sides, is not actually inclusion. It's just offering different kinds of vanilla ice cream. Instead, when we involve others in the creation of our projects and communities, our we becomes larger, and what we do and how we do it transforms into something new. And in the process, we change, our community changes. And beloveds, this sort of radical change is really hard. And it's often resisted by those who really like vanilla ice cream and don't necessarily understand why someone else wouldn't. We are all both privileged and challenged. We benefit from and are oppressed by our communities and social and political structures in different ways and in different measures. When we are in positions of responsibility, it is our task to identify the ways that we benefit from our privilege as well as the ways that we don't, and to sit with the complication and discomfort as we figure out how to be part of the liberating struggle that reaches back in history and forwards to justice. Because, beloveds, telling people that they are welcome and that they are whole just how they are is working for justice. In our Words for All Ages, Sarah told us why we read our covenant in Spanish, not because it makes people think that we are all fluent in Spanish, but because we want to say that the most important thing about this congregation is our covenant, and so we are making it accessible, because Spanish is the most common language, non-English language spoken in this country. This is one of the reasons why we're doing a Spanish immersion in Buenos Aires with All Souls Church this summer. Please do reach out if you want details because the deadline is coming up. Okay, I'm going to ask you. So we do the covenant in Spanish. What are some other ways that UUI is already working to practice preemptive radical inclusion? Bathrooms, all gender restrooms, absolutely. Plus the single stall ones in the cottage for people who want privacy. Thank you. What else? Say that again? Electric doors, exactly. Ramps and automatic doors, ramps up here so that people can who are mobility challenged can get on the stage and lead worship. Electric doors so that people can get into the sanctuary. hmm Captions on Zoom, yes. The hearing coil, that's right. There's a hearing assisted loop. Exactly. What else? The new flag, excellent. That's right. Both your flags, both your Black Lives Matter flag and the inclusive, trans inclusive flag. That's right. The art on the walls. How it changes and how it represents artists with all sorts of backgrounds. That's right. hmm Music, the music we use. That's right. We use music from all sorts of different places and originations. Hmm? Renewing our welcoming congregation certification. Exactly. Exactly. Y'all are doing some really great things, and you should absolutely be proud of what you are doing. I honor it and I celebrate it with you. And sometimes we botch our welcome, right? Like last week, I didn't have any alternatives to apple juice in the cornbread and cider communion. That was on me. That was my mistake. I've heard some things too in the congregation about the pagan group specifically. This last one is really problematic and hurtful because the pagan group has many of the leaders and current and future leaders of the congregation and is the fastest growing population in the church and among the most preemptively radically inclusive groups already. So we sometimes botch our welcome a little bit. But change is hard. Change is hard. If you joined a church and the only music that they were playing was classical, you might feel like you are losing something. If other types of music start to be included, you will miss the classical music. You might even begin to resent that. You might say, why are we including macchiato ice cream? I only want vanilla. Or you might say, those people are getting too much power. I'm going to give you a hint. Anytime we say those people, we are being the exact opposite of inclusive and welcoming. We are saying, in fact, that vanilla is really the only real flavor. C.B. Beale says that as we practice preemptive radical inclusion, we must examine ourselves when we claim to be leveraging our privilege for good. Only classical music is good, right? That's leveraging our privilege. Because sometimes, Beale says, we're really just trying to keep our privilege or our power or keep things the way we'd like them. Beale says we can't fall into the fallacy that good is the same as just. And they say that the space needed and the judgment necessary to discern between the two is full of dialogue and reflection, intention, discomfort, struggle, sandpaper, right? But that can lead to growth. So I'm going to invite you to think with me. What are some ways that UUI might become more preemptively, radically inclusive? That we might extend a welcome, assuming that people are already in the room and not waiting for them to have to ask us to change. I'll give you one. And actually, on this one, there already are people in the room. But one way we might do this is for people who are neurodiverse, who are overwhelmed at how loud it is at coffee hour. We could put a table here in the sanctuary for a quiet coffee hour for people to connect. What are some other things we could do? Signing for the deaf. That's right, we could have signing. We could learn our covenant in sign language. What a great idea. Yes, Mary Beth. More disabled parking. Mm-hmm. And maybe doors, electric doors on all the buildings, not just this one, right? So that people can get into the cottage and the RE building. Mm-hmm. Very good. The ramp has a hole in it, so fixing the ramp. There's a crack right there, so fixing the ramp so that people with wheelchairs and scooters are able to utilize the ramp better. Yes. Excellent. Spanish captions. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Spanish captions. We could, oops, go ahead. Say that again. Inclusive seating for all body types and weights. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And that means seating both in the sanctuary. It means seating for when we are have tables. Mm-hmm. Excellent. We could have a more diverse group of people as worship associates. Thank you for that plug, John Cody. We are looking for worship associates. Please see us if you have interest. That's right. We could have a scent-free seating section for people who are sensitive to perfumes and smells, right? For people who are unable to come in person, we can ensure that every church activity is multi-platform. And on Sunday morning, we can find ways to include your joys and sorrows here in the sanctuary. And in fact, this last one is one we're working on, trying to make that connection between Zoom Church and in the sanctuary because you're one community, right? Ah, noise canceling headphones for people who are sound sensitive so that they can just look at the captions. These are great ideas. Gluten-free options at coffee hour, that might be a possibility as well, right? Programming and liturgical content that, say that last part again, because I want to make sure that I say it out loud so that it gets, see, I'm trying to make sure that everybody can hear it, right? And so that people on Zoom can hear it. So I'm repeating things. So programming and content that makes sure that engages in an expansive idea of racial equity and racial justice. Yeah. Yes. Offering carpooling to get people to church who can't get there on their own. Yes. Educational sessions on other theological and religious backgrounds that are present in our congregation. Are you excited about this ice cream party? Doesn't this sound like a really great ice cream party? And I know some of these, there is a financial aspect to, but some of them there's not, right? The mission of UUI, passed by the congregation a number of years ago, is to be a welcoming community for spiritual growth, moral reflection, social action, and religious education. And I see the evidence of you living your mission all over the place. And I also see the evidence of how this congregation values acceptance and community and stewardship. To continue to be preemptively, radically inclusive is to live our values even more intentionally and explicitly. To presuppose that everyone who wants to, who needs to be here, is always and already here. To embrace that just because a flavor of ice cream might not be for you, to understand that there are others who want or need it for their spiritual growth, and to enlarge our we so that what we do and how we do it transforms into something new, to draw the circle wider and wider still, and to not rest until all means all. Let's make this a fantastic ice cream party. May it be so. May we make it so.